Welcome to the Freedom Factor and our first segment of This Week at the Capitol. Our guest today is District 18 Representative Stephen Holt, and he's graciously agreed to come on the show and give us some insight into the excitement of the past week and what to possibly expect next week. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I would just start out by saying, I'm sure Oliver, these are all hard to keep up with, but under the redistricting, I now represent District 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I used to represent District 18, but all those numbers have changed now. So now it's District 12. But I'm 12. So glad to be here with you today. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I understand you just did a radio show.
I did. KDSN here in Denison. Every other week I do a radio interview with them. And then the week I'm not doing it, Senator Jason Schultz is doing it. So this week was my week. And we talked about a lot of topics today.
I bet. There's been a lot of excitement at the Capitol and in the state, especially with the new school choice bill being passed. So, and the purpose of this episode, it's not gonna run super long, and we're gonna talk about, what's been going on at the Capitol and what maybe we could expect next week. I know it's hard to keep track of for everyone. So once a week, we're gonna do this with a couple different legislators. So, Steve, with that being said, let's talk about the school choice bill and everything that happened at the Capitol last week. What is your insight on it?
Well, it was an incredible week. I mean, Republicans have been working on school choice for at least 2 years, very, very seriously. But there were school choice bills introduced 8-10 years ago. Jake Highfield, who used to be in the legislature, I believe, introduced a school choice bill. So this has been a priority for Republicans for a very long time. It was interesting to get some of the emails I've gotten from those who are opposed to it. But, the fact is that this is in the Republican Party platform of Iowa. School choice is one of our fundamental beliefs, and it is in the Republican Party platform. We've been working on it for several years. The governor campaigned on it everywhere she went. She won by almost 20 points. We picked up a supermajority in the Senate, and in the House, we increased our numbers to 64. We all talked about school choice. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that we moved forward and fulfilled our promises on school choice. And I suppose those who are opposed to it would now prefer that we passed a version from last year, which was a very modest version that wasn't anything like what we passed this year, which is universal school choice for the citizens of Iowa. It was an exciting 3 weeks. Moving that through the committee process, the public hearing, and then finally getting it done. It's, I think, fundamentally important. I think the vast majority of our public schools are doing things the right way, but there are those public schools that are not. We know that there is indoctrination taking place. We know that in the Ames Community School District, we had posters hanging in second grade classrooms that told kids second graders were told that they could choose to be a boy or girl, both, neither, or something else, and nobody got to choose for them. There's no reason in the world to do that to impressionable children, to put those doubts in their mind on something they're not even thinking about. It's absurd. It's horrible. I think you could make a good argument that it's child abuse. Then you've got in the Linn-Mar Community School District, you've got a situation where their policy is that they will not tell parents. A 7th grade and above, I believe it is, if a child decides they want to transition to a different gender and change their name, the school won't tell the parents if the child doesn't want them to. I mean, it is horrific. And I think folks have to wrap their head around the fact that public education has been around for a long time, but only recently did they decide that they owned our children and knew better than parents and are trying to supplant parents.
It's interesting that you say that. Did you see that some of the Linn-Mar folks were on Fox TV this morning?
No, I did not.
Yeah. Okay. So you had written an incredible post on school choice, why we did it, basically is what it was called. And you did the claim versus the facts. You dispelled a lot of myths, and we put in there, when we posted that on our blog, we put a graphic in of what that school board member said. Mm-hmm. So on Fox News, Geraldine Jones sent me something, and that Linn-Mar school board member said the purpose of a public ed is not to teach kids what parents want. It is to teach them what society needs them to know. The client is not the parent, but the community. And so, I mean, that's made national news now.
Well, it's words that Joseph Stalin would be proud of. I mean, let's be realistic here. It is not yet the case in our public schools, to the level, obviously, that in communist countries or under Stalin or whatever. But in some public schools, our young people are being taught to hate our country. They are being taught that socialism is morally superior to capitalism, and they are being taught that they can choose their gender. It doesn't matter what parents think or what parents feel. So what that school board member is saying is, she's giving the middle finger to parents, saying, we don't care what parents think. We're going to do what our ideology wants us. And they're also placing themselves in determining what she believes the public or society, she's making herself the arbiter of what that standard actually is. It's dangerous. Everybody should recognize this for what it is. It is our public schools being turned into indoctrination centers by the left. That is what it is. And
it is.
We have to stand up to it.
We do, definitely. And we're all working hard for that. And we appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean, it's pretty exciting seeing some of the legislation that's coming through. So let's talk about that for a minute. What are some of the bills coming through that are going to protect our kids from this stuff?
Yeah. Well, I've got an interesting bill that I guess some of the news media don't like. I don't know. It's what I'm calling the Crimes of Communism bill. I think it's House File 12, but it requires our schools to contrast, totalitarianism, communism, socialism, and contrast those things to the principles that were important for the founding of our country and our values. And this is necessary because, let's face it, all you got to do is Google and you will be alarmed by the reality that a huge number, an increasing number of our young people embrace socialism and Marxism, believe that socialism is morally superior to capitalism. So why is that happening? We have to ask ourselves, why is it happening? So as I said in the subcommittee, I think that they're getting bombarded with a lot of messages on social media and on the TV shows and movies they watch. But I said, I also believe that some educators are engaging in this. And so the headline was, representative accuses educators of teaching socialism. So the bottom line is, again, the facts are clearly there. There are numerous articles out there. All you got to do is Google it about, the fact that our kids are increasingly embracing this stuff, about professors in our universities who unabashedly are socialists and Marxists. Yep. And if you go to this is great, the Democratic Socialists of America have a website, and one of their articles on there is why socialists must go into education, so they can indoctrinate our kids. And then there's numerous articles there's one I found about a teacher that has sort of come forward. She was a teacher for many years in South Carolina and Illinois, I believe. And she came out and said that the education system is starting to teach that socialism is morally superior to capitalism, and that the only reason it hasn't failed is because it's not perfected yet. She also says that they're not teaching the fact that millions of people died under Stalin, were murdered, executed, put in prison camps. They don't talk about all the people that were starved and murdered under Mao and all of these things that have happened in communist countries. They're not necessarily talking about these things. Now, again, I'm not saying in all public schools, but I'm saying that some educators and the left, let's face it, they are heavily involved in our regional universities. And as the Democrat Socialists of America want, they are in the education system, and they are teaching that socialism is morally superior.
Okay, so I've got to interject, because I was just reading this morning. It's called The Critical Turn in Education: From Marxist Critique to Post-Structuralist Feminism to Critical Theories of Race. This is written by Isaac Gottsman from Iowa State. He was in the education department in leadership. And he says, if we are going to truly push for a feminist, anti-racist, democratic socialist society, my advocacy, one that can forcefully push against the structures and ideologies that support the entrenched patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism, I believe that we have to address these questions honestly, rigorously, and as a critical education community. And this is all about how important it is to teach our kids about socialism and Marxism and critical theory. And that comes down from our universities to teaching our teachers to then, companies like Castle that come in and are the gold standard now for social and emotional learning.
Yeah. But apparently, the news media would have us believe that isn't happening. And so, I'm going to enthusiastically advance this legislation. We'll see if we cannot even make the wording even better in it, but it's the beginning. We're advancing that. We've got a battle on our hands in so many different areas, and this is just one of them.
So one of the things that when a bill goes to subcommittee, how much time do you have, or how much notice do you have that, hey, we're going to have a subcommittee on this bill, and now the bill is going to be to committee? How does that process work, and how can we stay on top of it?
I think at least 24 hours in advance, we have to notify the public that there's a subcommittee on the bill, so that people can watch online, or they can personally come to the Capitol. At subcommittees, the public does have the opportunity to speak, to weigh in. Lobbyists come and weigh in. Then the bill goes to committee. Also, the same process. It is publicly made known what is going to be considered in committee. In the committee process, the only folks allowed to speak are members of the legislature. But then there can also be a public hearing. If somebody wants to request a public hearing, there on the bigger bills, more controversial bills, there's oftentimes a public hearing where people can weigh in either in person or they can go online and make comments. So and you can go to the legislative website, the Iowa legislative website. All you got to do is go to Google or Yahoo, whatever, and put in Iowa legislature. It'll pop up, and you click on that, and then there's all kind of sections you can see where bills are being considered and the times of the subcommittees and all of those things.
So are there any coming up next week that you think should be on our radar?
That's a good question. It's hard for me to answer that right off the bat. We got so many moving parts. I would say we've already had a subcommittee on the crimes of communism bill I mentioned. We've also got a bill you'll be interested in. I can't think of the House file number at this time, but it is requiring our regent universities to explain some of the terminology we're seeing on their website and in the educational curriculum. Obviously, very irrational, woke ideology type phrases and words, and we want them to come and define those for us and tell us how they're being used in the educational setting. Again, trying to do everything we can to identify this stuff and figure out how to move us in a different direction. So that bill's already had a subcommittee, and it'll be continuing to move. The crimes of communism bill actually already moved out of committee. I believe we had the committee on that one, and so that one hopefully will come to the floor and it may be amended next week. One of the big issues over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be doing subcommittees, we're going to be doing committees, but we're also going to be deciding the level we set for supplemental state aid. We're required by law to do that within 30 days of the governor's giving us the budget. And so that'll be one of the top topics you'll be seeing for the next 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
And there's another bill that I was going to bring to your attention. We're also going to be considering a bill that would put some additional penalties for violating 802, the critical race theory bill. And we shouldn't have had to do that, Oliver, because it fits in with other parts of the bill of the code, and the Board of Education had all of the authority they needed to take action on somebody who was violating 802, but they haven't been doing it. So we're going to try again and try to see if we can put some additional language in to create some penalties.
So will that help with because one of the issues we saw is that the Iowa Department of Education just wasn't following up on it or just wasn't supporting it.
Right. We've got so many irons in the fire right now on these issues, I can't even begin to tell you, but I'll try to go over as many as I can. Representative Schuyler Wheeler, who's the education chair, is all over this, and I'm working closely with him. Schuyler just really wants to get a handle on all of this. So we're going to look at teacher prep courses in our regional universities where this stuff is starting, see what we can do to address that. We think we need to reform the Board of Educational Examiners, get a lot more parents on that board. and do a lot of reforms to the Board of Education so that they will actually enforce the law and actually, instead of aiding and abetting what is going on with social emotional learning and with critical race theory and all of these things. So we've got so many irons in the fire. We've got we're working on a bill that would, well, you've probably seen it already, the bill that doesn't allow the gender discussions for third grade and below. Third grade is too low. That's just where we started. So your viewers need to know that bill is going to drastically change as we move through the process, because I question why we need to have that conversation at all with young, impressionable people and who may not even be thinking of this at all. And then you're going to put in the mind of a second grader or a third grader or a fourth grader, oh, you mean that I don't have to be a boy or I don't have to be a girl? I mean, it's absurd in the extreme. And why couldn't those conversations be had privately between a counselor and an individual student that might be struggling with those issues? Why are we putting those doubts into young children's minds? I mean, it's just insane, some of the things that are going on. So we've got a bill on that. We're working on legislation to address books in our schools that are not age appropriate. Again, we're not talking about book banning. That's what the other side wants to beat us over the head with. Is what is age appropriate? Just like with movies, we have R rating for movies. Kids under 17. Are we banning movies? No. We're deciding as a society what is age appropriate.
It's funny how they try to use that label, book banners. I mean, when I think of a banned book, I think of a book that you can't find and you can't buy and you have to read in the dark somewhere where nobody. We're talking about just applying a rating to a book so that you don't have pornography hanging out around in the school library that kids are picking up and reading this, like that book Push, graphic detail about incest and something like that. It's nasty. And anybody that calls someone a book banner for not wanting their children to have access to that stuff, I just don't understand it, but
I don't either. Again, we're talking about what's age appropriate, and
age appropriate.
Genderqueer and Flamer and all these books are not age appropriate. Now, you want to talk about a public library? That's a different story. I mean, a public library is a public library. I still believe you should have age requirements on certain type books or require parental permission to check it out. So we're looking at a lot of things on how we can revise our obscenity laws as they relate to the school and get a handle on this. We're looking at what Missouri did on that issue. We're still looking and hope to move a school transparency bill that will give more transparency to parents. Obviously, we passed the school choice bill. So ultimately, if schools don't want to listen, and I've already had a superintendent say to me on a conversation on an issue as to how they might use talented and gifted funding now that we've given them the flexibility on that to use it for either talented and gifted program or for teacher salaries or bonuses. And that superintendent said, hey, we're not going to mess with talented and gifted program, because if we do, then those students that are talented and gifted, their parents might pull them out, send them to a private school. So they're already thinking this is what happens when somebody realizes, hey, there's an option. And so, I mean, it's already, I believe, starting to have that effect that's going to be very positive and allow parents to, again, their ultimate voice is you don't like what's going on in the Linn-Mar school district and they're not listening to you. You have options now.
I got to tell you, some of our superintendents had been watching the comments on the school choice bill to see if there are people in their community that were commenting on it and what their comments were. And some of those people were getting phone calls. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. That's amazing. It's so it's, that's a major step. That is a huge step in giving parents a voice, but parents have got to be paying attention. I know a lot are, but maybe not everybody. Parents have got to be paying attention to what their children are being taught. And so that's one of the things we want to do in relation to the conversation we were having about this gender identity stuff being taught to, being discussed with young children. What we want to do also, when I was in class, sex education was about what happens between a man and a woman and how babies are created. Right. And so we're looking at maybe the possibility of maybe we want to change the name of sex ed to reproductive education and teach strictly and tell schools what they're going to teach in that regard. And it's not about gender identity issues. It is about reproductive education. And so there's a lot of moving parts that we're
What are you doing? What are you doing about, like Linn-Mar schools? They have a policy that allows boy, say a boy identifies as a girl, to use the girl's bathroom, to use the girl's locker room and shower. Is that a civil rights issue, or is that something we can address outside of that code?
Well, we believe that there's a strong possibility we can address that the same way as we address the girls' sports issue. Because there is an exception in the code. There's an exception when it comes to athletics and things of that kind. We believe that we can create language that would address this issue, and say that it is about biology, and the restroom has to be used. It has to match your biology at first, similar to what we did with the girls' sports bill. But that is also legislation in the works as well. And we have legislation that's basically going to say, school district, you do not get to not tell parents about what is going on with their children on this or any other issue. Now, if there is something, because I've heard this concern, I think it's valid, if there is some indicator that there's some child abuse or something going on in the home, there are plenty of other laws and mandatory reporting requirements to address that. So I think it is a false narrative to say, well, if we tell the parents, there might be some danger to the child. That is just really, I think, a really disingenuous way to try to convince people that, we have the right not to tell parents what's going on with their children. Again, if there's something going on related to abuse, then the mandatory reporters had better be reporting.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of that is coming from the American Association of School Counselors as well. They're teaching counselors to push the gender stuff and the pronouns and not to tell parents. But
yeah. Well, and the American Library Association, I think, is one of the main culprits in putting out these pornographic books in our school. It's just amazing that these once trusted institutions on the national level are now becoming indoctrination advocates.
Oh yeah.
Same thing with the CDC. I mean, they're getting into stuff that has nothing to do with what their original mission was when it comes to a lot of these ideological issues.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so next week, you can't really tell us like when subcommittees are meeting or when committees are meeting, because it's about a 24-hour notice then.
Yeah, they're being set, and you can go on the website and look. There are some set for Monday and Tuesday of next week, and the rest of the days of the week. It's just, we have so many moving things going on. I could not tell you specifically which ones are going to happen. Some of the main ones that I've talked about, the subcommittees, have already taken place. Committee already taken place, and the next step would be floor action once we perfect the legislation. And
how does a bill get a committee after it's passed through subcommittee?
Yeah. So the way I work as a committee chair, and the way I think most committee chairs work, we don't assign a bill to subcommittee unless we think it has a good chance of passing into law and is a good idea. So I don't assign bills to a subcommittee if they're a terrible idea. I kill hundreds of bills every year from those who want to assault the Second Amendment or, make abortion more available or expand government, whatever, obviously from the other side of the aisle. So I don't assign a bill to subcommittee, and most committee chairs don't unless we believe it's a good idea, good public policy, and should be, and could have a good chance of being signed into law by the governor. So first of all, there's that. So if it's assigned to subcommittee and it passes subcommittee, then it's more than likely going to get a committee vote. Sometimes something that looks like a good idea, when you go through it in subcommittee, you make a decision not to advance it because there's unintended consequences you didn't foresee, and that's the beauty of the subcommittee and committee process. You get to hear from stakeholders and from folks who know the area and from the public. Sometimes bills don't advance. You may be aware that I put a bill to end tenure for our Regent University professors. Got a lot of attention this past week. And I knew that this bill probably wouldn't advance, and I actually did not advance it out of subcommittee. It was my own bill. I didn't advance it, but the purpose of that bill was to get the attention of the Regent universities. There are a lot of consequences related to ending tenure that would be bad for Iowa because no other state does that. We would lose a lot of really good professors to other states. And so there's a lot of economic consequences to doing that. And so I did not advance the bill, but it gave me the opportunity to remind the Regent universities that we're tired of the assault on free speech. We're tired of some of the things that are going on our campuses related to this woke ideology and socialism and all of this stuff, and to let them know that we're paying attention. I do believe that a lot of tenured professors think that they're titanium plated and they can get away with murder, and that's why they're doing some of this stuff. And so if it was just could be considered in a vacuum, I think it would be a great idea to get rid of tenure. But the reality is it does impact a lot of things in Iowa and economic issues that make that very difficult to do. But anyway, that's an example where a bill did not advance from subcommittee.
Okay. All right. Well, in an effort to keep this a little shorter, although we're at 25 minutes, I knew that was going to happen. I want to thank you for coming on. Is there anything that, any words you have for our viewers and our listeners and our members?
Yeah, just for anyone who would be interested in knowing how the school choice bill works, the Governor's Students First Act. Oliver, you've done an outstanding job of posting some stuff, and the audio you did of my remarks was just amazing. So I would just encourage people to don't just listen necessarily to what you're hearing out there. Get the facts on the school choice bill. I believe it will strengthen both public and private education. I think it's great for our students. And again, the whole purpose is that we want to fund students in the best educational setting of their choice and not systems. And so I would encourage people, if they have questions, to look up that information.
For sure. And you did an incredible job in that blog post. And you can find that at www.iowans4freedom.org. And I did an audio recording on it. That's how good it was. I mean, so if you don't have time to read it, you can listen to it on Spotify or follow the link in the blog post and play it in your car. But it gives you, I actually sent that to some folks that were against the bill. They would listen to it and it changed their mind.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and that's the value of that. It gives you the knowledge to talk with folks about it and give them the truth about the bill and how much it'll benefit schools in Iowa. So, Steve, thanks so much for coming on. And I hope everybody found this episode enlightening and valuable and inspiring to kind of get involved and find out where these bills are at in the process. You can come and speak at a subcommittee meeting. You can make comments on the bill. You can email your legislators about the bill. It's important to do that. So thanks again, Steve. We really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So there you have it. That about wraps it up. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. And have a blessed day.